Good evening and welcome to the Press Box. I'm Vanessa Johnson. For the next 30 minutes, I'll be your host. With me are Reynolds and Marcks. How you guys doing?
Hanging in there.
How are you?
That's great. Okay, let's start off tonight with the Atlanta Knights. Okay, what's up with the team? They're up and down. Saturday they lost. Sunday they won.
Jay, I think when you look at the strengths and weaknesses of this team, I think that, first of all, we saw something encouraging over the weekend. Greenlay had a good game Saturday. When you look at the schedule, like we said before, and you have these constant back-to-back games like they're going to have this weekend, you're going to have to play your second goaltender a lot. And so one of the keys is to have strength with two goaltenders, and we're starting to see that, and hopefully that'll go through the rest of the season. That'll give them a pretty good advantage, I think, in this league, and they're going to need it because they're in the toughest division here.
Yeah, Bergeron played good too. So if they have solid goaltending, they should be okay down over the long haul of the season. Also, we discussed on the show how their defense is pretty good. They got Rochefort, I think, now. He's pretty good. And their offense should come around. I think the offense is the weakness. The defense is the strength. And on offense, Edgerton, if he's hurt, that'll really hurt. And I think they got Brett Gretzky back from Tampa Bay over the weekend.
Yeah, he's back. Yeah, Puma's up.
Yeah, so that should help their offense if Edgerton isn't hurt.
One other thing is that this team seems to get a lot of penalties. And when you look at Knights games, a lot of times they're 2 men short. They got to cut back their penalties.
Okay, let's move on to college football. We have an exciting weekend coming up. What about Notre Dame and Florida State?
Jay, I think that this is really a classic game. First of all, people really underestimate the speed of Notre Dame. People sit there, when you think of speed, yeah, you think of Florida State, and I can go for that. Notre Dame has people like Jeff Burris in their secondary. And Jeff Burris, I mean, this guy, when he was recruited out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, as a running back, this was a higher-rated athlete than Garrison Hurst. And, I mean, that just shows you the talent that they have up there in South Bend. They take this guy who can squat over 600 pounds and stick him in the secondary. I think that that's the caliber of athlete you're looking at up there. I think Notre Dame has an advantage, I think, also on the line of scrimmage. I think the key here for Florida State is they're going to have to, on these handoff plays, have Sean Jackson bounce outside and beat them into the corner. If they can't get that play, if Notre Dame is able to string their defense out and take away the run up the middle from Florida State, I think Florida State's in a little bit of trouble. But if they can get Sean Jackson out to the corner, cause Notre Dame to spread it out a little bit and get a little bit of running there open in the middle, I think Charlie Ward can do a lot of damage.
I think the key will be how close the game is. If Florida State can run away with the game in the first half, then they'll obviously win the game. And they've been in so many of those games all year long. In fact, I think every game they've played, they've been way ahead as it goes down the stretch. Yes. So now Notre Dame is a team that's played close games. Lou Holtz is the kind of coach that thrives on that kind of situation. And I think if it's close going into the fourth quarter, Notre Dame will steal the game just because of the pride and the tradition and playing up there. The weather, who everyone said was going to be a factor, isn't going to be a factor. It's going to be about 50 degrees, 55 degrees. It'll be like a pretty good day. So I don't think that Florida State will have to handle inclement weather. So all they need to do is play their offense, run the ball, run the score up, and hopefully, get out ahead. I think the key, like I said, will be is that if Notre Dame can keep that game close, they'll have a shot.
Well, I heard on the radio tonight that it was going to be a little cooler than that, and it was going to be wet up there. Jay, I really think that Notre Dame has got to run the football. Here it is. Lou Holtz is a big game coach. I mean, he showed that earlier at that game up at Ann Arbor. But the thing is that he's got to depend on McDougal to come through with a big performance again, like he has in previous big games. And Florida State is going to give Notre Dame, I think, a lot of different looks, and they have the athletes to do that. Derek Brooks, to me, is just about one of the best linebackers in the country, and I think will come out early at the end of the year. I think that's the one advantage Florida State does have is linebackers in this game, and you can count on Bobby Bowden and his defensive coordinators to go ahead and take advantage of that and try and put pressure on this quarterback and force him to make mistakes. I think Florida State's going to need Notre Dame to make a few turnovers in this game.
Well, I don't think so. I think Florida State has a better team. They have the better athletes. The only problem with Florida State is they probably have more individualistic talent, okay? Notre Dame will play as a unit and as a team. And you mentioned running the ball. That's how you keep the game close. If Notre Dame can establish the ground attack early in the game, it won't be like 40-20 going into the third quarter or fourth quarter. That's how you keep a game close traditionally in football is run the ball, play good defense, eat up the clock, keep the other team off the field. You got to keep Ward and all those fleet-footed receivers off the field.
I don't think Notre Dame is going to be able to do that, though, because look at the game they played against the Navy a couple of weeks ago. At halftime, they were losing. I think it's a little pride came in after that, and then they caught up and said, we have to beat them.
Well, with that game with Navy, I mean, do you think Notre Dame was actually paying attention to that game? It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Lou Holtz and his coaching staff were using yet an extra week to prepare for Florida State. I could see a coach going ahead and doing that, and it would make sense. I would do the same thing if I were him.
Sure. Plus, the Navy was just like a practice game anyway.
Yeah, it's just sort of one of those complimentary games for those Notre Dame alums up there in the East.
I think another factor here will be the point spread. Florida State's favored by a touchdown, and this is the kind of thing that Lou Holtz will milk all week long. He'll be telling his team how they're not any good, they're ranked behind them, now they're picked to lose a game at home, and that's the kind of thing that Holtz thrives on, and he'll just have his team really fired up. And we all know that emotion goes a long way in college football.
Right.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Holtz is a good motivator.
Either way, I think Florida State's still going to come out on top.
Okay, Vanessa thinks Florida State's going to win. Who do you think is going to win?
I have a feeling Notre Dame's going to win the game. If it's close, I keep thinking that the game's going to be close. If it comes down to like the last play kind of thing, like a last-second field goal, it'll be Notre Dame that hits the field goal.
Well, at the beginning of the year, I thought Notre Dame would win this game. I still think they will. I think that scheduling a game up there in South Bend in the middle of November, I think you're asking for it. I'll go with Notre Dame.
Okay,
We'll
Florida State. Okay, what about these two teams for a bowl outlook?
Okay,
Well,
I'll tell you right now,
go ahead,
whoever
Jay.
wins this game will lose their bowl game. You watch. It's the kind of year it's going to be. If Florida State wins, then they'll get upset in the bowl game. If Notre Dame wins, and then they're the big number one team, they'll get bumped off in a bowl game. That's the way it goes. There's so many good teams that have tied once or lost once or whatever. There's a lot of good teams in the top 10 this year.
So you don't think Florida State's going to go in there and win Saturday and win again?
No, what I think Florida State will lose Saturday and then win their bowl game. It's really going to be a strange situation. I don't see either team going undefeated.
No. What do you think, Ty?
Well, I think the Fiesta Bowl has to be licking their chops because I think that Miami is going to win the rest of their games. I think they will go to Morgantown and beat West Virginia up there.
I don't think that.
Yeah, I think they will. And then they're going to be in the Fiesta Bowl against the winner of this game. I don't think either team will stumble after it, even though Florida State has to go to Florida Field.
All right. Okay, we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
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 Hi.
How you doing?
Fine.
I have two questions I'd like to ask. One is pertaining to Notre Dame and one is pertaining to Syracuse. Is the guy who went to Woodward Academy, Kenny Spears, the running back, I guess he came out of high school about 89. I was just wondering if he's still on the roster. And also I wanted to know, could you give me your insights on the downfall of Syracuse Orange football team?
Syracuse Orange. Okay, and a guy out of Marist or Woodward Academy?
Yeah, Woodward Academy. He was a running back. He was an All-American running back.
And he's on the Notre Dame roster?
Well, I was calling to see if he was still on there. Kenny Spears out of Woodward Academy.
Spears out of Woodward, you know?
I
don't think he's on the Notre
I don't
Dame
think
roster
he is
because I haven't
either.
heard of him.
No, if he is, he may be a reserve somewhere, or they may have put him in the secondary like they do with a lot of good players.
Well, he was a pretty big fellow. He was like 6'1", 220 coming out of high school.
Yes, he was. I'm familiar with him, but I don't think he plays anymore.
Oh, okay. And could you give me the insight on what you feel about the follow of the Syracuse Orange? Because I had picked them to lead their top 5 team.
I thought Syracuse, thanks for the phone call. I first of all thought Syracuse at the beginning of the year could have been a dark horse for a national championship. I did not expect West Virginia to be as good as they are this year, and I thought the Big East, the only hurdle that they really had in the Big East was Miami. Syracuse has been a major disappointment. I saw, when looking at that West Virginia game, they just dominated them on the line of scrimmage. First of all, Syracuse had an injury at the beginning of the year with the starting linebacker, and that hurt them a lot. They weren't able to fill that void, and a lot of teams found success running up the middle on them. Also, I think it's been a disappointing year for Graves, the quarterback out of Washington, D.C. Some people had him projected to be competing for a Heisman.
Okay.
It hadn't turned out that way.
We have a phone call. Thank you for calling. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, hey guys, I enjoyed the show.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I had a quick question. You mentioned Florida State and Miami as a possible matchup in the Fiesta Bowl. Obviously, both teams are on track to win the rest of their games. My question was, do you
That's
think
not
Florida
obvious.
State will give Miami another opportunity to play them?
Okay, your question is whether Florida State will give Miami another opportunity to play them?
Yeah, I don't think they're compelled to do so.
No, I think they pretty much have to play who the bowl coalition picks. So
Right.
if Miami moves up in the rankings and the bowl coalition picks them to play Florida State, Florida State doesn't have a say-so in it.
Okay, I just wanted to, I guess, put that forward. I didn't think they were compelled to do so, but if you say so, I guess they are.
But let me address another point you made, that Miami was going to win the rest of their games, on track to win the rest of them. They have to go to Morgantown, and I don't see them winning that game. Just as West Virginia, as Ty said, dominated the line of scrimmage in the Syracuse game, they're going to dominate the line of scrimmage in that Miami game.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you for the call.
I don't think they are going to dominate the line against Miami. I just don't see that. Not only that, West Virginia's quarterback got hurt, and they don't know if he's going to be able to come back and be at full strength against Miami. That's going to have a big significance. If they don't have their quarterback in that game, Miami is just going to stack everyone up on the line and make them pass to beat them, and that's just not going to happen.
That's right.
I still think Miami doesn't have the team they had in recent years. They don't have the dominant line of scrimmage players that they've had, and that's the strength of the West Virginia team. Wasn't their quarterback play. It was, like you said, their line of scrimmage, both offense and defense. They got some big kids up there and older kids, and they're no fluke at being 8-0. So I say Miami will probably go in there being a favorite, and which will just get those people, those hillbilly people, all fired up, and they'll be ready for them.
Be disappointed. Okay, let's talk about Alabama. How did they let LSU?
Well,
beat them
this,
on Saturday?
Jay, we had hit on this earlier also. Alabama has had a lot of injuries on their offensive line. Their quarterback was out. I really think that Gene Stallings has made a couple of big mistakes this year. And, you can't sit there and argue or complain about what he's done for the program. But at the beginning of the year, he had two big-time freshman running backs, and he's redshirting both Valerie out of Texas, who was one of the top running backs there, Curtis Alexander out of the Memphis area. Georgia wanted Alexander badly. Now, if Georgia thinks that if that school knows what a good running back is, they've had a bunch of great ones.
Yeah.
And they wanted Alexander more than they wanted Mo Williams. They didn't get either one, and Mo Williams is doing a great job at Kentucky, so I can only imagine what Alexander is going to be. I think he should have played those guys. Another thing, I think he should have played David Palmer at quarterback like everyone else said earlier.
Not right away. I think that you got to give the other guy a shot, but you're right. They should have switched. And he even said that in the post-game press conference. He said, well, we didn't switch to Palmer soon enough.
Right.
I mean, that guy won the Ole Miss game. They should have seen it right then. The writing was on the wall, and he didn't see it.
We have a phone call. Thank you for calling. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, how y'all doing?
Fine,
All
and
right.
you?
Okay, I had a question about about Otis Nixon.
Okay.
Is he gonna be with the Braves next year?
Ty, you want to take
I don't think he is. I think Otis Nixon's going to test the waters out there. I think he's going to want around $3 or $4 million for 3 years. And I'm talking about $3 or $4 million each year. The Braves are trying to cut their payroll. I mean, the Braves are trying to look at trading Ronnie Gant and bring up some of the younger players. So certainly if they're looking at offering Gant to other clubs, then I really don't think they're going to be interested in paying Otis Nixon $3 million a year.
Yeah, Nixon he could have re-signed with the Braves for $2.7 million and opted to forego that and go into free agency. So I don't think the Braves are even negotiating with his agent at this time. He's off the team.
He
And
is.
I had a prediction about the NBA title. I look for the Seattle Supersonics to win it all this year.
That's a good pick. All right, thanks for the phone call.
Okay.
They are a good team.
Yep.
So we were talking about Alabama. Do you think what's their bowl outlook?
Well, they're going to go to the championship game over there on the west side. And I think they're going to play Florida. I think Florida's going to go ahead and knock off South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Those teams should not be much of a contest for them. And then over there in the state of Alabama, Alabama plays home games over there at Legion Field. That's a home game for them. I think they'll beat Florida over there.
Is Barker going to be back for that game?
They don't know yet.
I think he will. If Barker's back, they'll beat Florida. If he's not, I think they'll struggle with Florida.
Probably. But the key for them is to get those offensive linemen back. And not having Stevenson and Clay up there on the offensive line has really hurt Alabama. And their tight end, Johnson's been injured a lot as well.
Okay. Let's talk about the SEC bowl agreements. Who's going to be playing who?
Well, first of all, when you talk about these bowl agreements, I really can't believe how ignorant the people are over there in Birmingham in making this decision. You sit there and you have a conference with teams like Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama. I mean, those to me look like 3 competitive top 10 teams every year. And here it is, you take your second place team and put them in a bowl for $1 million. Why do you do that? You take them out of a potential Fiesta Bowl, you take them out as a runner-up for the Orange Bowl, you take them out as a runner-up for the Cotton Bowl, and that's costing your conference millions of dollars every year. And another thing is that those Florida people are not going to be happy if they have to go back to Jacksonville 2 years in a row.
That's right.
I don't see Tennessee as a top 10 team, though. I think they're overrated.
Okay.
They're going to lose to Vanderbilt on the last game of the season.
No way.
Well, Vanderbilt did win their first conference game this weekend against Kentucky.
They're going to upset Tennessee, too.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
We have a phone call. Thank you for calling, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, how's everybody doing?
All right.
Fine.
I want to know what does it take for the Braves to win the World Series?
What does it take for
break.
the Braves to win?
They need a break in the playoffs, I guess, this year. I don't think they'd have beaten Toronto this year in the World Series. To tell you the truth, I don't know. I think they have the best team in the National League right now, okay? So you can't – I mean, they improved the best team in the National League over the course of last offseason. Now, whether they improve again, I'm saying they will. They already have the best pitching staff. If they improve their defense just a little bit more and their offense a little bit more, then they'll have the best team in the National League again. However, you know, I've said it up here before. If you win the National League and go to the World Series, it's like a crapshoot. You get a break here or there. You got to win, 4 games. You can be the best team in baseball and lose the World Series. That's just the way it is. And
I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
no, and that's I think that's what it's going to take for the Braves to win a World Series is to get a couple breaks at the key point in either the playoffs or the World Series.
My answer to that question, 2 things: an established closer and clutch hitting. That's something that they really haven't had. They've been missing that, and that's the reason they get beat, plain and simple.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks for the call.
Okay. Who do you guys think are the 3 best teams in the country?
Jay, why don't you hit on that first?
The Wisconsin Badgers, and followed by Florida State and Notre Dame.
Okay. Well, I like Florida State and Notre Dame up there. I think they're very strong in the line of scrimmage and have a lot of depth. And my third team is Tennessee. Tennessee is in the same class as those 2 schools. The only reason that they have Marcks on their record, well, first of all, it's very hard to go down there in Florida Field and beat Steve Spurrier down there. I mean, he never loses there. And then the second thing is that, I mean, this guy had to go in and play Alabama at Alabama. And
So did LSU.
yeah, but they got to play him after Tennessee and Ole Miss got a hold of him and injured all their players for him. I mean, those were a lot of people banged up for Alabama because of those 2 football games. So Tennessee is a team that is loaded. They have speed. They have experience on their defensive line at their linebackers. Their only weakness at the beginning of the year was their secondary, where they have 4 true sophomores. Now those guys are basically juniors. I think Fulmer's done a great job with Tennessee. He would be an excellent choice for Coach of the Year, I think.
Okay. Well, I think Florida State, of course. Notre Dame's a good team. What about Auburn? You want to say anything about Auburn?
Those cheaters?
Auburn, I think, is a pretty good football team. I question their depth at linebacker. Auburn had some players quit on them during the previous controversy that they had before the season started and before their probation kicked in. Bowden has done a great job over there at Auburn, and I think the schedule has really favored them a lot to begin with. I think getting Florida at home, as tough as Florida is at home, outside of the state, they're not nearly as good. They're not the same club. And so it really did not surprise me when they went over there down on the plain and got beat by Auburn.
How do you think they're going to match up against Georgia this weekend?
I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. I think Georgia's going to come out there and pass and be successful and throw on those guys. I think what Georgia needs to do defensively is to take the run away. They cannot let Stan White turn around and hand the ball off to Bostic and Steve Davis and let them run for 5, 6, 7, 8 yards every time. They have got to go up there, change some things, give Stan White different looks, and make them check off, call audibles, try to get their quarterback in the game, but I would just try and take that running game away from them. Because if Georgia doesn't do that and just sits there and comes up with a 4-man front and just stands there and lets White see what they're doing, I think they're in for a long afternoon. Auburn will hog the ball for 40 minutes if they let them get away with that.
I think this game is just important and equivalent to the Gators game, and I don't think Georgia's going to pull it off. What do you think?
I kind of agree with Ty. I think that there's going to be a lot of points scored. It's going to be a score-a-thon. And to tell you the truth, the only reason they beat Florida was because they had the ball last. If Florida had the ball last, Florida won the game. And it's going to be the same situation. If Georgia gets the ball last, they're going to go pass the ball right down the field and win the game at the end. Auburn doesn't have the passing defense to stop a team like that. Now, they could get way too far ahead for that to matter. But if you can recall the Auburn-Florida game, that Florida scored, with like a minute and a half left, and then Auburn came back and won the game. And so whoever has the ball last in the Auburn-Georgia game will win it, and I'm just hoping it's Georgia.
Well, I think traditionally Auburn plays well in Athens. I mean, Auburn went 10 years without losing a game in Athens. I think another issue here is going to be mistakes, turnovers. That's going to play a big part in this game. And the other thing is the kicking game. I think Auburn's got a much better kicking game. Georgia cannot even come close to kicking the ball in the end zone on a kickoff. I like Auburn to win because of those reasons.
Okay. Who do you think has been the best conference to watch this year? I mean, the ACC, SEC, or?
I think the most entertaining league to watch this year has been the Big Ten. There have been wonderful surprises up there, and you got an early sense of that when Michigan went up there to East Lansing and got beat, and then Illinois cruised into Ann Arbor and beat them. I really like a lot of the clubs they have up there, and of course the greatest surprise is Barry Alvarez and Jay's Wisconsin club, and I watched that game with Ohio State. Great football game. Barry Alvarez is an excellent coach. That game with Ohio State, I really think he outcoached John Cooper in that game. I thought Ohio State was dominating the line of scrimmage in the first half and should have had a lead, and it was 7-7 at halftime. And Alvarez made the proper adjustments at halftime and took over the game, and Wisconsin should have won that football game. That Badger team is a good football team.
Well, if it wouldn't take them 6.8 seconds to kick a field goal, they probably would have won. But you're leaving out Indiana. Indiana is also a good team in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is a good conference this year. The Pac-10 is also an exciting conference this year. The teams that were picked to do well are doing horribly, and the teams that were also Rans are suddenly coming right through the ranks. So I think both the Pac-10 and the Big Ten have been exciting conferences this year, and maybe the Rose Bowl game will be an exciting game for a change.
Two big games out there this week. USC at Washington and Arizona State at UCLA. And Arizona State's a team that's been coming on playing really well lately. I like UCLA to win the Rose Bowl, but they're going to have to earn it with games with Arizona State and USC.
Yeah, it's going to come down to that USC-UCLA game. It always does, seems to, now that Washington has stepped aside.
I'll tell you something else. USC, when they go up to Seattle, they never play well up there, and that's only a 1.5-point spread. I think Washington can beat them pretty badly. I think that's one of the teams that they're really mad at because of the probation. USC's one of the darlings of the Pac-10.
Okay. One small note on Georgia Tech. Okay, about 2 weeks ago, I remember I said that they will win the remainder of their games. They have done that so far, and this weekend they will face Wake Forest. What do you think they're going to do?
I think they'll win. I think they'll beat Wake Forest. They're back to just slamming Levens and Bell and Lincoln at you, and that can only be a plus for Tech to establish that ground game like that. Levens coming over didn't he come from Notre Dame? I think?
Yeah.
They needed to use him more in the beginning of the year. I think they were trying to get Donnie Davis oriented in the passing game, and they went away from the running game in key situations, and now they're back establishing it. And I think they've gotten 2 100-yard rushers in like 3 straight games, I think. Yeah. And that's why they've won 3 straight games. When you can establish a ground game like that, you can beat anybody.
Now they won 3 straight, or I think they lost to North Carolina State, and then they've won these 2 straight.
They are.
Okay, well, They are using their running backs, and a couple of weeks ago when we commented on that, that's one of the things I was saying. They need to use these running backs more and just hand the ball off to them and not try and pass as much. They have gotten, but then on the other hand, their defense gave up 500 yards to Duke and over 400 yards to Baylor. This game coming up this week at Wake Forest. Yeah, I think Tech should win the game, but Wake Forest played Virginia tough up there in Charlottesville. Tech's an 8-point favorite. I think they'll win, but I think it'll be close.
Okay, then it's that one big game that following week against Georgia.
Yep.
Okay, what about NFL? Will Detroit run away with the NFC Central this year?
Jay, that's the quietest 7-2 team I've seen this year. And, you know, here it is. Is there a team that wants to come catch them? I mean, here it is. Your Green Bay team had, 5 or 6 turnovers last night and gave away a game I really think they had no business losing.
For the third time this year, they gave away a game that they had no business losing. But Detroit's ahead because they have a soft schedule. In the NFL, I think everybody knows if you finish 5th, that you can get an easy schedule. You play all the 5th-place teams. You don't have to play the interconference schedule that your divisional rivals have to play, and that's really helped. You've seen other teams. In fact, I've seen the Packers do that, finish 5th, then the next year go 10-6. So Detroit's just doing it. They haven't really gotten into their divisional schedule yet, so that's why they've beaten teams like Seattle, New England, and stuff like that. So, they really haven't shown anything yet. I think coming back and beating the Vikings on a national TV game a couple weeks ago was a big step forward. But, the Lions, they'll probably win the Central Division. And I'll tell you why, because they improved. They had the death and the offensive line, and then they had another crippling injury in the offensive line. And they struggled to have the best running back in all the NFL, but they couldn't get 3 or 4 yards, So now they've improved it with Freilich and who else they signed? They signed some all-pro offensive linemen off the free agent market, and now they're, Sanders can get 6 or 7 yards a carry now instead of the 3 or 4 he's used to. So, they're not doing it with mirrors. They're a good team. They got a good offensive line, and they'll be there at the end of the year.
Detroit got some critical wins at the beginning of the year. I think that win out at Los Angeles was a big win for them. I think they're too far ahead. I think it's really going to be tough for Green Bay or Minnesota or someone like that to catch them.
Well, that's the only 2 that can.
Yeah.
I don't see the Bears or Tampa doing
No.
anything.
Okay. Well, we got a big week in the AFC West this week, so what's going to happen, guys? What do you think?
Well, here it is. You got the Raiders playing Kansas City. And Kansas City is coming off of a Monday night game, so they're going to have one less day to prepare. Will Joe Montana play? I don't know.
No, he won't. I don't think he will.
I like the Raiders in this game. I think the Raiders are going to win. And also, Minnesota is having to go to Denver. Denver needs to win this game to stay close. These are 2 must-win games for both clubs.
Denver will win because it's at home. The other teams can't breathe.
That's
Plus,
right.
Minnesota's used to playing indoors. They're going to be playing outdoors, those pansies.
Yeah, I like Denver as well.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you guys, and I thank our callers and viewers for watching. Join us next Tuesday at 9 o'clock, same time, same channel. Thank you.